Powerful collaborations, cutting-edge science, and curious minds coming together for a glimpse of the future. Stay tuned as we look at the latest updates on some of the most promising technology projects. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Peter Ballant from Technicon. Today we look at the AQUARIUS project. If you recall from last time, AQUARIUS is an EU H2020 project dedicated to clean water. Partners in the project are advancing the clean water process by developing new methods of sampling and sensing for contaminants in water. Through the discoveries in AQUARIUS, what was once done in a laboratory can now be done on site. Today we speak remotely with Hakan Ricardo Turan. He is the head of marketing and sales at QuantaRed Technologies in Vienna. They are one of 9 project partners throughout Europe. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is the second podcast we did about AQUARIUS, and in the first episode, we learned a little bit about AQUARIUS. And to recap, this project was launched to bring water analysis to the source rather than taking water to the lab for analysis. And in AQUARIUS, you're focusing on ways of measuring oil in water. And since you represent QuantaRed, which is a high-tech water analysis company that's a partner in AQUARIUS, you may be a little bit more focused on the end product rather than the research. And granted, these two things are both important, but can you tell us what products could come out of AQUARIUS?
Sure, good question. And as you mentioned it, the company QuantaRed Technologies has a background in oil and water measurements. So we collected in around 12 years a lot of experience in that area by offering a solution as a benchtop unit to the market. Benchtop unit in that case means that we have a measurement device used in a laboratory. So which leads us to the biggest difference in the development of the AQUARIUS project. This project is particularly about online and inline measurements. So to explain also a bit the background, the use of the words inline and online in our case have their origin in the segment of pipeline management. As the term suggests, we're talking about measurements directly taken in the line or on the line of the pipeline. So on the line would mean in that you bypass the mainstream, do the measurement and bring back the measurement sample to the mainstream. So the common process would be that you take the sample out of the process, bring it to a lab and do the measurement there with as we explained it before, a benchtop unit. In our segment of measurement devices, we differ between process business and lab business. So lab business includes everything which is about and what is going into the laboratory. And the process business, on the other hand, is everything which is mandatory for the process before it comes to the final product. So for example, the manufacturing process. So, and to make a long story short, the product which could come out of the AQUARIUS project is a unit that delivers constant control of the process itself. So a unit that is measuring one step ahead before we make the end control of the final outcome. That could be the difference.
And it seems like in AQUARIUS, rather than taking water to a lab, you're sort of bringing the lab to the water.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's the point of from which angle you want to attack a possible problem that you have. For example, when the water comes out, you can make the final control and everything. When everything is okay. But when there is any kind of issue, you want to figure out where the problem comes from. So by controlling the whole process or one step ahead, you can be ahead of the issue.
And the water we're talking about is perhaps water that was used in some sort of industrial way that could have some traces of oil in it. Is that accurate?
Exactly. So we are talking about water contamination in general, and there are a lot of different possible contaminations of the water. And we want to focus on the contamination of oil in water.
Now, you and I talked offline about products for the market and what really, I guess we could say, market analysis. Who decides what technologies should push research? And we'll take it from the point of view of your company, QuantaRed.
So I would start with the market analysis starts generally with the potential of application fields that you have on the market. So our potential customer needs to know how much the oil content is in their water. That's what we are talking about here. So we are talking mainly about two different applications at the Aquarius project. The first application is the processed water, which you can find in refineries, and the second one are companies working in environmental aspects. The second step would be to understand how the customer is working currently. That's what we talked about, like taking the final outcome and bringing it to the laboratory. And which potential needs and which potential need of the customer could you cover with a new development? So according to the need, you figure out what the purpose of your solution could be and needs to be. And that purpose was at Aquarius to control the whole process. So the answer to your question, which technology to push, as we as Quantared have the experience with the customer who's taking the final product or one sample out of one certain point of the process to the lab and do the tests there with a benchtop unit. So this is a snapshot of a very long process, and we can decide if everything is okay or not, if the results are out of limit or are we good to go. So it's pretty obvious which advantages will follow with a solution that is supporting a constant monitoring and gives you an information of the status, good or bad, red or green, all the time, which leads to the point that the customer themselves decide which needs they have and which research should be pushed. You can imagine all the analysis devices in the process business is also a little bit more complicated because it gives you a constant value, a constant response. And so you have different difficulties in the lab and also in the process. But again, to answer your question, the customer has a need and we need to figure out what this need is and we can support the customer with that. And we have the solution as the benchtop unit. So we saw the potential also for constant monitoring on the line or in the line.
And you, as the head of marketing and sales, I want to ask you from a market perspective, what aspect of Aquarius is especially noteworthy?
Oh, that's really good because it's a come together of international companies which are investing time, resources, and know-how to identify this particular need on the market and to work together to develop a solution to close this gap. So that's magnificent. So we're talking about the whole process of starting with an idea to bring out a final product that the customer actually can work with. So it's not just talking about it. It's like identifying the issue, finding a way to solve it, and literally to solve it with a final product.
This is amazing. I mean, it's not just, like you say, it's not just talk, it's not just research, it's actually research and then doing something with this research to make something tangible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Give us the real breakdown of the divisions in oil production and tell us where the Aquarius product would fit in.
Exactly, that's really important because, as mentioned before, we are talking about two main applications, and one of them is, for example, the refinery. So that is quite an interesting part as we differ between upstream, midstream, and downstream areas of the petrochemical industry. So the upstream sector includes searching and recovering petrochemical products from underground or underwater. The midstream includes the transportation of those petrochemical products as companies working in pipeline management. So finally, the downstream sector is working on the final product itself. For example, the crude oil recovered in the upstream sector, transported in the midstream sector, ends up in the refinery to be blended together to a fuel, which is the downstream sector. So a potential product which could come out of the Aquarius project can be placed in the midstream area or in a single process of the downstream area. Because when you ever saw a refinery, you saw millions of pipes there. So you also need to decide at which certain process I want to put this unit in the line or bypass it on the line. So midstream and downstream would be the answer to your question. And it's quite an interesting part, actually.
And so this sort of tells me that part of the refinery process is actually dealing with a lot of water and returning it to nature.
Exactly. So let me explain probably at this point. I mentioned the wording before, processed water. Processed water basically means when you have water in a process which is used in a certain process, that would mean that's processed water. And we want to understand what possible contamination of oil could be in that water. For example, let's go back to the upstream sector. When we recover, for example, petrochemical products from underground or underwater, there is also water in it. And we want to differ what is the oil content, what is the water content.
Okay. And what's in this for me? I mean, I'm an average taxpayer in Europe. What do I get from this?
Important for the average Joe is to protect this environment. So to have a clean water, that's the statement we want to have. One of the applications we talked about is processed water, which is basically water which is used in a certain process. So after the process, this water is discharged to the environment. And we want to have a statement regarding how clean the water is regarding the oil contamination. So to understand of the oil contamination is a part of the statement. When we bring it back and discharge it to the environment, we want to understand, we want to have a statement.
So it's an environmental effect, really, and that's important for everybody, or it should be.
Exactly. You can use different advantages out of it. For example, you want to understand how much oil is inside of the water, so I can use the oil. But important for the average Joe is definitely to protect this environment. And when we bring back the water to the environment, we need to understand what contamination of the water it is. So a statement for the contamination, and this oil contamination is one part of the statement.
This consortium, the AQUARIUS consortium, they've developed a prototype which we've referenced, and it was part of the description of AQUARIUS. I mean, that was part of the goal in the beginning. And now it's being tested. The prototype is being tested in real life situations. Can you tell us a little bit about the testing that's going on?
Yes, exactly. Also partnering that magnificent group of companies is the OMV, that's the Austrian refinery, and also the company KWR in the Netherlands, which is a water research institution. Part of the outcome are long-term tests at both companies to understand if the prototype is literally working properly, and also to understand what other requirements are needed. So it's not just a single statement if it's working or if it's not working. We also need to make it possible to work in the process of the customer. So we identify the customer, we identify the application, and we go there and we understand what the people there need that this unit and this prototype is working. For example, that goes also not just the procedure, also the service and the maintenance, up to break it down to simple questions like, what is the size of the unit? Is there enough space to put this prototype there? Is it big? Is it small? Is it heavy? Can I transport it? Do I need to constantly move it? So you need those kind of real life tests, long-term tests, to understand which kind of sample you're dealing with and what kind of bugs you can discover.
And this is really important. And I'm wondering if you're getting feedback yet and how things are coming along with the testing.
Mm-hmm. The previous podcast, which was with my colleague, Mr. Anatol Ehrlich, who is working as project and product manager here at Quantarect Technologies, he will be the best person to ask that. But I guess that I can give a hint that everything is right on track.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. I look at this consortium in AQUARIUS, and it's a group of different companies and research organizations. Can you tell us what are the benefits of working in a well-engineered and diverse team like AQUARIUS?
There is absolutely no other way this kind of accomplishment could have happened, as we are talking about so much diversity and experience of every single member of this consortium. So that's an incredible accomplishment and really great to be part of that team.
Now let's take a look at you and Quantared, for example, and tell me, what does success look like for you?
Oh, that's quite a good question, because our success is definitely that we've been able to use our experience in this oil and water measurements in the AQUARIUS team, and that we could show our colleagues the other side, the side of the laboratory. So here again, the difference between lab business and process business. It is great to be a part of that team. In my position, the head of marketing and sales in Quantared, I have quite a lot to do with the end customer and also people in between. So people who are dealing with the unit, servicing the unit, selling the unit in certain countries of this world. So we brought in this experience with those customers. For example, they are telling, okay, A laboratory unit is great and nice to have, but a constant measurement is what we need to bring this feedback live from the market to this team. That was definitely a pleasure for us. And as mentioned, we're being part of a great team and we put in also our experience and expertise.
Right. Okay. And it sounds like you bring a lot to the table because QuantaRed has an interest in moving a product, obviously, and making a quality product to serve the needs of their customers. And this is all experience that can be leveraged within the project.
Exactly. And we have great partners where we can test the prototype, to develop the prototype, to think out of the box. Because we have one certain way to do it here at QuantaRed, for example, as we did it the past 12 years. To understand what else is out there, what else do we need to focus on? Are we on the right track? Are we on the wrong track? And there are great people working with each other. I really enjoyed it for my part because I can always mention it to the market and bring back the feedback. So I'm just like the communication part of it, and I enjoyed the advantages.
Yeah, this must be a very fulfilling time for you then as things wrap up and you have something to show, you have some experiences to share. Yeah, it's really the idea of these projects is to accomplish exactly that.
Exactly. So really important is back to your question, what is in for me, as mentioned, important for the average Joe is the protect this environment to have a clean water. This is what we are following. This is part of a really, really big process, but this part needs to be done. And the whole consortium is behind that. And we'd love to see a working prototype.
We're lucky to have projects like this that are funded by the EU to accomplish exactly these ideas of keeping things clean and safe for the environment.
Exactly.
So thank you for your efforts in this project. And we may check in later to see finally how things wrap up. And thanks also for taking some time today to tell us about your project and how it's coming.
Thanks also from my side to you to make this possible. And Peter, really thank you for all your effort to make this public, to make this podcast, to bring this closer to the average people out there who are not so often dealing with those kinds of things, but which is literally important for everyone.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks. If you'd like to see more about Aquarius, check out their website at aquarius-project.eu. This podcast has been brought to you by Technicon. The project leading to this application has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program under Grant Agreement number 731465. This project is an initiative of the Photonics Public-Private Partnership.